students, my name is Samapti Sinha Mahapatra and I am the zoology teacher in the Sri Chaitanya Institute. So we are back again with the chapter that we were discussing, that is chemical coordination and integration. So we have already discussed about two glands, hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, but in the pituitary gland we have only discussed about the different hormones of the anterior pituitary. Today we are going to discuss the different hormones of the posterior pituitary or the neurohypophysis. So let's just start with the class. So I've written about the different hormones of neurohypophysis. Students, the very first point which is very important is that neurohypophysis is actually having no hormone of its own. What I have written is that it has got no hormone of its own. Then what is the actual function? Students, we know that hypothalamus has a control over the pituitary gland, right? But the posterior pituitary is the part of the pituitary which is in direct neural control. Are you getting my point? It is in the direct neural control. I have also mentioned it that it is under the direct control of the hypothalamus. The neurons of the hypothalamus which actually produces the two hormones, which is oxytocin and vasopressin. These two hormones, pay attention that these two hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin, is actually the hormone of hypothalamus. But it is stored and it is being released from the posterior pituitary. So even if your posterior pituitary, your neurohypophysis is not having any hormone of its own, but it is very important since two of the hypothalamic hormones are stored in the posterior pituitary and we released from that part. Now, we have also come across this term while we were discussing the hypothalamus. That's herring bodies. But students, I did not mention there that what are these herring bodies. Let us look at the definition. It says that the axon terminals of the neurons storing these two hormones. So what happens is that the neurons which are directly connecting, which neurons? The neurons of the hypothalamus which are directly connecting the posterior pituitary, those neurons axon terminals. Those neurons, axon terminal, actually stores these two hormones. So those axon terminals where these two hormones are stored are called as herring bodies. Now, let us look at some of the comparative or some of the characteristics of these two hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. So here on this side of the board I have mentioned about these two hormones. One is oxytocin and other is vasopressin. Students, the very first point that I have written is that which cell bodies produces oxytocin and that of vasopressin. So the oxytocin which is produced by the cell body, which is produced by the neurons, those cell bodies of the neurons are located in the paraventricular nuclei. Students, it is located in the PVN. So if you are asked PVN is responsible for production of which hormone, then you will be answering that it is oxytocin. So the paraventricular nuclei is related with oxytocin. But once I say vasopressin, the cell body is producing the vasopressin is actually the cell body is located within the SON, that is supraoptic nuclei. Is it clear? PVN related with the oxytocin and SON related with the vasopressin. Now look at the other names of oxytocin and vasopressin, which is quite bit important. So I would star mark these two other names of the oxytocin as well as the other name of vasopressin. First, let us focus on the other name of oxytocin. Oxytocin, students, are also called as birth hormone. It is also known as birth hormone or it is also called as milk ejecting hormone. Now, it is not responsible for secretion, students. Okay, let us first discuss why is it called as birth hormone. The target of oxytocin, students, we will see that oxytocin is very, very important because it is going to act upon the uterine muscles. And when it is going to cause the contractions of the uterine muscles, especially when the child is about to deliver. So oxytocin actually acts upon the uterine myometrium, and vigorous contractions are going to take place. Vigorous contractions are going to take place in the myometrium. That is going to help during the childbirth, which is why the oxytocin is also called as the birth hormone. Now, why is it called as the milk ejecting hormone? So very important to note here that not milk secretion, students. We have seen that during pregnancy, prolactin is helping in the synthesis of milk, right? It is not going to help in the synthesis. What it is doing, students, it is helping in the ejection of the milk out of the mammary glands. We are going to study the entire mechanism in human reproduction. Okay, so here just remember that when the baby is going to suckle for the very first time, the oxytocin acts upon the myoepithelial cells, and then there is a ejection of the milk. Okay, now let us look at the other name of vasopressin. Again, this other name is important, and we all must have come across this term somewhere in the excretory system. Okay, so the other name of vasopressin is called as ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone. Now students, the function of antidiuretic hormone, you can easily relate with the term. It says anti, that means opposite. Anti means opposite, and then diuretic. All those agents that promote diuretic means diuresis. And diuresis is meaning is excessive loss of water. Diuresis means excessive loss of water. So what it is doing? It is antidiuretic. That means it is going to oppose that excessive loss of water, which is why it is called as antidiuretic hormone. And how is it preventing that excessive loss of water? Actually, the target of vasopressin is DCT, that is distal convoluted tubules of the nephron. And we know that when it acts upon DCT, also it might act upon the collecting duct. So when it acts upon DCT or it acts upon collecting duct, it reabsorbs a lot of water. And when it reabsorbs a lot of water, that means, students, definitely the urine that is going to come out will have less water in it. That's how we prevent diuresis, that is excessive loss of water. The other function of ADH is vasoconstriction. Students, it can increase the blood pressure as it also has a constrictory function, that is the constriction of the blood vessel, hence is a vasoconstrictor. Now what is this? This is Pitocin. Usually what happens, Pitocin beta is a artificial oxytocin. Now what happens, sometimes females undergoing delivery process, sometimes their myometrium is not showing that vigorous contractions, maybe because of the lack of oxytocin. And we said that oxytocin is a birth hormone, very important for the childbirth, very important for the contractions. So what happens in that case? Artificial oxytocin is sometimes given, and that artificial oxytocin, students, is called as Pitocin. So just remember, you should know that what is Pitocin, you should know that that's oxytocin only. Okay, I would like to tell you one more information about vasopressin, that what happens when a person frequently consumes alcohol. We know that when a person is consuming alcohol, excessive urination is seen. Excessive urination is seen, too much of urination. Why too much of urination, or why too much of water loss? Now you can relate this. Alcohol is actually going to inhibit the ADH, and if it inhibits ADH, it is not going to prevent any water loss, because ADH was preventing water loss. If you inhibit that, definitely a lot of water is going to be released out through the urine. So that's the comparison of oxytocin and vasopressin, students. Quite a bit important, so focus on all the differences between these two. Now students, let us look at the disorders of the pituitary gland. So first of all, we will be talking about the disorders related with the growth hormone. So I have divided the disorders into two categories. As you can see on this side, I have written as capital A hyposecretion, and on this side of the board I have written it as hypersecretion. So first thing that you need to know is what is hyposecretion and what is hypersecretion. When I say students, it's hyposecretion. Hypo means less amount. So I'm writing it over here. When you are saying hypo, that means the reduced amount of growth hormone. When I am saying hypersecretion, that means hyper means too much, increase. So hyper means there should be increased amount of growth hormone. So first thing should be clear. When I am saying hyposecretion, that is a less secretion. When I am saying hypersecretion, that means the increased secretion. First of all, let us look at the two conditions of hyposecretion of the growth hormone. So one I have written as dwarfism, one is dwarfism and the other one is acromicria. Okay, I've written a lot of things about it and I'm going to tell you about a lot of things related with these two. But students, I would want to tell you that the minimum thing that you can do is at least remember that which is a condition of hypersecretion, which is a condition of hyposecretion, which is the condition before puberty and which is the condition after puberty. Okay, if you remember at least these points, you can easily relate it with the function of growth hormone, right? Whenever I will be saying less amount of growth hormone, so the all functions of the growth hormone will be seen in less amount. Whenever I will be saying the increased amount of growth hormone, you will always see the over function that is shown by the growth hormone. Okay, so the two conditions of hyposecretion, one is dwarfism and the other one is acromicria. Dwarfism, students, is also called as ateliosis. That is the other name of dwarfism. When I say dwarfism, that means it is the hyposecretion of growth hormone before puberty. Hyposecretion of growth hormone before puberty. When I say acromicria, that is also a hyposecretion, but that's a hyposecretion of growth hormone after puberty. Okay, that's the first difference between these two. I've also mentioned what do you mean by micria. Students, micria has come from the word micro and micro means small. Now I will tell you why is it called as micria, why is it called as micro. Now when you look at dwarfism, students, what do you see when the people are suffering from dwarfism? I've written it as premature stoppage of the body growth and reduced skeleton development. Actually, when the before puberty condition growth hormone is less, overall height of the person is short. In fact, you must have come across these type of people who are often referred as midgets. Okay, since the overall height is short, they are referred as midgets. Now, why there is an overall reduced skeleton development, why there is a premature stoppage, why there is a premature stoppage of the growth is because the epiphyseal plates, students, what are these epiphyseal plates? We know that these epiphyseal plates we have come across when we have studied the structure of bone. Actually, the epiphyseal plates, which is actually a cartilage, these epiphyseal plates which are present at the end of the long bones, where they are present at the end of the long bones and they are responsible for the longitudinal, they are responsible for actual growth of the long bones. These epiphyseal plates are lost before reaching the puberty. So that is why the overall height of the person is reduced. Now when you are saying acromicria, it's not about the overall height. It is saying that specific body parts remain smaller in size, like your hand, like your face, like the jaw, like the feet. So when the specific body parts remain smaller in size, that's when we say the person is suffering from acromicria. So Dwarfism is hyposecretion before puberty, and acromichuria is hyposecretion after puberty. Now let us move to hypersecretion. Hypersecretion says that increased level of growth hormone. Again, there would be two conditions. One is hypersecretion before puberty, one is hypersecretion after puberty. When I am saying gigantism, that means the hypersecretion of growth hormone before puberty. When I say acromegaly, that means hypersecretion of growth hormone after puberty. The people who are suffering from gigantism, students, they have abnormal, or what I have written, extraordinary height growth. Why? Because there was too much of growth hormone. And we know that growth hormone is promoting the elongation of the long bones, acting upon the bones. So overall height will be extraordinary. That is gigantism. But in the same way, when we say acromegaly, it is usually observed in the middle age, okay? It is usually observed in the middle age, and that's the hypersecretion of growth hormone after puberty. Now students, you can look at the term. We must have come across this megaly term quite often. Splenomegaly, hepatomegaly. Whenever we use the term megaly, in fact megaloblastic anemia. So all these words are having megalo. Whenever we use the term megalo means large. So when I am saying beta hypersecretion of growth hormone is seen after puberty that causes acromegaly, specific body parts, they are larger in size, like the jaw, like the nose, like the face, like the feet. The specific body parts are disproportionate, okay? That's the condition of acromegaly. I have written one more term which says kyphosis. Kyphosis, students, is often observed in the people suffering from acromegaly. What is this kyphosis? Usually when there is an abnormal increase in the height, what happens? Specific part, that is your vertebral column. What happens? The bending of the vertebral column is seen. And that bending of the vertebral column, students, is called as kyphosis. So that's the comparative of the hyper and hyposecretion of the growth hormone. Okay students, now let's move ahead. Just make a note of this disorder that I have mentioned in on the board. That's Simon's disease, okay? So just make a note of what do you mean by Simon's disease. You might come across this word quite a few times. So when you say Simon's disease, it is also a condition of hypopituitarism. Hypo means less secretion of the pituitary hormone. That is the hyposecretion of the hormone of pituitary. This is usually seen in the adults, okay? This is usually seen in the adults when the Simon's disease, you will say, so you will always say it is seen in the adults and it is the deficiency in the functioning of the pituitary hormone. So just make a note of that, okay? Symptoms, you don't need to write it here. Actually, it is going to affect all the organs like your liver and other parts. Only remember the condition is hypo. Now moving on to the next disorder, that's the disorder related with, students, the ADH. When I say the disorder related with the ADH, that disorder is called as diabetes insipidus, okay? That disorder is diabetes insipidus. So when we actually think of diabetes, we have in our mind that it's, you know, glucose, somewhere related with the glucose. Sugar, maybe sugar, but that disorder is actually the disorder of the pancreas that we are going to discuss later in this chapter, and that is diabetes mellitus. But focus, here we have written the term diabetes insipidus. So whenever we say insipidus, insipidus actually means tasteless. Why do we say tasteless urine? Why do we say tasteless urine? Though nobody has tasted the urine, but why we say it's tasteless is because there is a decreased functioning of the ADH. We have written that deficiency of ADH, if there is a deficiency of the functioning of the ADH, that is definitely going to cause excessive loss of water through the urine. Since ADH was responsible for water reabsorption, when there is a decreased functioning of the ADH, diuresis is seen, and diuresis is actually the loss of water through the urine and making the urine taste less. That is called as diabetes insipidus. So we are done with the disorders of the pituitary gland and we are done with the pituitary gland. Now students, let's move to the next gland, which is very small. Not only smaller in size, actually there is not quite a bit, much information about this pineal gland. That is the pineal gland. Yes, you have heard it right. We are talking about the next gland, which is the pineal gland. Now let us look at some of the information related with the pineal gland. The size is pea size, very smaller in size, rounded and a reddish color gland. Okay. Pineal gland's origin is, as I have written, that it is originated from the ectodermal layer. So the origin is ectodermal. When you're talking about the location of the pineal gland, students, location is on the dorsal side of the forebrain. On the dorsal side of the forebrain, your pineal gland is found, which is attached with the roof of the third ventricle. So we have discussed about the different ventricles, the lateral ventricles, the third ventricle, the fourth ventricle, already in the neural control and coordination chapter. And here we are saying that pineal is found on the dorsal side of the forebrain, and that too attached on the roof of the third ventricle. Now, what is the other name of pineal gland? Just like the pituitary was called as hypophysis, your pineal gland is also called as epiphysis. It is having a small stalk. Pineal gland has a small stalk which is called as the pineal stalk. So, what is this? This is the hormone produced by the pineal glands. Students, it's not melanin, okay? So most of the students, you speak it as melanin. No, melanin is the pigment of the skin, okay? That we have already discussed is, going to control your different pigmentation. What I have written, the hormone of pineal is melatonin. What is the hormone? It's melatonin. Now students, melatonin is a derivated hormone, derivated amino acid. It is derived from the amino acid tryptophan. It is derived from the amino acid tryptophan. Okay. Now let us look at some of the functions which we know about melatonin. So I have written it in different points. Let us look at the first point. The first point says it plays a very important role in the regulation of 24 hours diurnal rhythm. It is going to control the 24 hours sleep-wake cycle, when we are sleeping, when we are waking up. That is the very important function which you will come across almost in all the books. That which gland acts as a biological clock, which gland maintains your 24 hours diurnal rhythm. That is your melatonin. That is your pineal gland. So very important function to act as a biological clock. Okay, looking at the second function, when is the production of melatonin highest and when is the production of melatonin lowest? Actually, melatonin is induced definitely in light, okay? Melatonin will be produced definitely in light, but a low amount of light, a darkness. So, melatonin amount is seen highest during when? It is highest during the midnight. It is going to promote sleep. Okay, when melatonin is highest during the midnight, definitely it is going to promote sleep. We are going to switch off the lights while we sleep. Why? Because when you switch off the light, amount of light is reduced, melatonin is high, that is going to promote sleep. And in the same way, when melatonin is low, when? During the mid-noon. Highest during the midnight, lowest during the mid-noon. Additionally, what are the other functions that, melatonin, in some books you will see that it is mentioned that it can affect your body temperature, also known to affect your metabolism. Okay, in females, it is observed that it can affect the menstrual cycle. Okay, it also has a role in, somewhere it can also affect the skin pigmentation. Okay, this point is very, very important, students, that melatonin has a role in opposing the gonadotrophins. It can oppose the action of FSH and LH. We have already discussed in pituitary gland these gonadotrophins, these follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, very, very important for the maintenance and secretions of the gonads. If you have any hormone that acts opposite to FSH and LH, which is melatonin, acting opposite to FSH and LH, that is going to delay puberty. Why delay puberty? Because FSH and LH are the gonadotrophins that actually helps in bringing the puberty. So melatonin opposite action to FSH and LH, that's how it delays puberty. Students, melatonin and the pineal gland, there are a lot of concepts and lot of points given, but at least you all should know these points which we have discussed. This is the different functions of the hormone of pineal gland. So we are done with the pineal gland now. We are going to discuss, students, the thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland in the next class. Till then, stay happy and please study whatever is being taught in today's class. Thank you. Have a great day.